we're going to go ahead and start with webpack. So let's go ahead and first make it necessary for us to have webpack. So here in clientapp.jsx, rather than having React look like this up here, we're going to say import React from React. And we're going to say import render from React-DOM. Okay, so these are ES6 modules. This is what they look like now. For those of you that are coming from a Node background or a common JS background, this is the same as const react equals require react. But we're not doing this anymore. This is the old way of doing it. And import React from React, this is the new way of doing it. Now you might ask yourself, why are we doing it this way? Why didn't we just stick to require? Because everything already supported require. Well, if you look at what this was there, this is dynamic, right? We're feeding React into a function that's going to bring it in. Therefore, we could say require x, right? And x equals React. So this can be dynamic, which is cool, but to be honest with you, most of us were not using the dynamic functionality of importing modules. Some of us were. Someone's going to point that out to me. But most of us were just using it statically, right? Which is just exactly like this. You can't say import React from X. That's invalid, right? It's always going to be from that. So in light of this, if we do static modules as opposed to dynamic modules, this affords us some really cool things that, for example, we can have webpack go through all of our code and only include the things that are actually being included. So an example of that would be, let's say I had a module that export default, or let's say export const x equals 5, and I have another that says export const y equals 10, right? So let's say I had a file that did this, that exported these two different constants, right? And in another file, I would say import, so different file, import x from, I'm in client app right now, but it could be from my module, right? This is my module. What's cool about this is I'm only including x, right? And I'm not including y. Webpack is smart enough to say now, because of static modules, y is never imported. I'm not going to include it. Now, this is often referred to as tree shaking, right? That's the common terminology for this, which is a total misnomer, right? Because tree shaking has the idea of like you're going to go through and shake all the dead things off. It sounds like dead code elimination, which is not actually quite true. It's actually live code inclusion. So it's actually going to only include things that could possibly be reached. As opposed to dead code elimination, it's going to go through your code and remove things that could not be run. Largely, you're going to end up at similar situations, but let's be accurate here, right? So that's why we went with this new module system, is it can be statically analyzed by our tools, and we can start pruning things off that don't need to go down the wire, right? That's really important to us because we're trying to constantly get things down in terms of file size. So notice that I'm saying include only render from React-DOM. Now, I have no idea how React-DOM is actually structured, but ideally, if render is not importing other things and React-DOM was built with this static analysis in mind, we could only include the render function and we could leave everything else behind. I don't know if that actually happens or not, but it's just a good idea to only include the things that you need. So just in case they built it in such a way that, or maybe in the future it gets built in such a way that you're only including code that could possibly be run. So that's what these curly braces mean. It means I'm only including this particular piece. So down here, instead of saying react-dom.render, I'm actually just going to say render, right? Because these two reference to each other, render and render. Does that make sense? Now, Notice I don't have curly braces around React. I'm including the entire package here. So if you remember here, I had export const x equals 5, right? So if I say export default 5, right, that's what you're getting here. It's the default export.
If you mixed in a require in there, if you did have a dynamic module that was being loaded, would webpack just skip over it then?
I think the answer to that question is that it would just compile them to be the same thing. I think it actually would work. It's not valid, right? But I think it would still work with webpack. The real answer to that question is you still can do dynamic imports. It's just done differently now. We're going to talk about it at the end of the third day, but there's a thing called import as a function, right? And this is going to be how we do dynamic imports now. So, right, and then you can say promise dot then react, right? And then you can start working with React inside of that promise body. So it's also asynchronous. So semantically it's a bit different, but this is ultimately going to be better for us. It's going to be better for the web. Okay, so now this doesn't work. we broke it. Because this has to be compiled now, because right now, well, actually Chrome does support a little bit of ES6 modules native to the browser, but we're not going to be doing that today. So we need to run this through Webpack now, so that Webpack can go out and grab React. It can go out and grab React-DOM, compile them together, and send down one file. So what we're going to do here is, there it is. We're going to go to the command line, and we're going to say, first of all, you're going to have to do either a yarn global add or an npm install -- global. If you're getting sick of this, there's also kind of a little cheat that you can do here. You can also say /nodemodules.bin/webpack. This should work for all of you if you've done all the yarn installs. So inside of bin is going to be all of the different things that are being included into our project. So we could call ESLint from there, we could call flow from there, prettier, all these different things. So if you want to, you can do that as well, or you can just install it globally. That's kind of up to you. I have it installed globally, so I'm just going to do it that way. Oh, maybe I don't. So I'm going to do it that way. Node modules .bin webpack. Then the entry file is going to be client, or it's going to be JSX, client app.jsx. And then I'm going to have it output to public/bundle.js. So you can see now it took in this file client app.jsx and it output bundle.js. So now if you go into JS, sorry, not JS, if you go into public, you should see a file called bundle.js. And you can see that it has all this stuff in there. Did I not save this? I did not save it. Okay. This should be a lot bigger now because it's going to include, I'm going to run it again. There you go. Okay. Yours should look something like that, right? Basically, it's saying I needed to include all of this stuff, right? Because this is all the stuff coming from React. And I outputted a bundle that is 739 kilobytes. Seems reasonable, doesn't it? It's not. It's not reasonable at all. But you have to keep in mind this is unminified, this is ungzipped, and this is the development build, right? So we're building specifically now for our purposes. This is going to be code that's easier to read, so you can actually open up the bundle and read it. And it's going to be the version of React that has all of like the developer warnings and all that kind of stuff available. So when we build this for production, it's going to be much smaller, right? Because it's going to be minified, it's going to be gzipped, it's going to be tree shook, it's going to be all of those different things. Okay, so now if we go to index.html, and we have this script right here, we're going to say source equals bundle, or sorry, public/bundle .js, right? And now we don't have to include these two script tags up here either, right? Because they're already being included with our bundle. So this is one of the nice parts about Webpack, is every time I include a module, I don't have to go add another script tag. It's just going to always be included in that bundle. So I should be able to now to go to this, and I can refresh, and it still works, right? Everything's still being included. You can see that it's only including bundle, which if you look at how big it is, it's quite large. You can see it's huge. I mean, look at that. Look how on the side there. It's just astronomically huge. But this is literally the entire library for React, unminified with all of the development helpers. Any questions about Webpack?
If you go back to the client again.
Yeah.
How does it know how to do that without any Webpack config file?
Well, we're just using all the default settings.
And Webpack already has that out of the box?
Yeah. It's actually, people like think that, well, Webpack is a big complicated beast, for sure. It doesn't have to be a big complicated beast. The only thing that at its bare minimum that it requires an entry point, which we gave it, client app, and requires an exit point, which is bundle.js. Everything else, we can just rely on Webpack to take care of. Now, don't get me wrong, we're about to make a big ass config file, right? Because we don't want the default build, but by in itself, this works as is. Webpack can be configured through the CLI. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at here.